Up the slides. I just wanted to pass the mic to you, Director Mom, to just kind of share your perspective on the significance of this planning process, and also how is this advancing your personal vision and aspirations for what the Lakefront could become?
Thank you. Big questions. Thanks, Mordecai.
Always big questions.
How much time? Well, thank you so much for having me. I think to your point about Mr. Madison and his touch, he's literally touched so much of the lakefront. You all probably know the Rock Hall, the Great Lakes Science Center, Northcoast Harbor, and now this plan. His firm is on the team with Lisa, shaping the future of the lakefront. And there's a few things that I just wanted to kind of poll the audience and see what you know about Lake Erie. So my first question is, what percentage do you think is the Great Lakes so the Great Lakes is, let me start over. The Great Lakes is fresh water, right? Huge bodies of fresh water. Do you know what percentage it is for North America? Total percentage of fresh water for North America. Can you say it a little louder?
85 to 90%.
People off the top of the dome, or that's research?
That came straight from her.
That was quick.
She knew it. Yeah, it is over 80%. What about the world? What percentage do you think is the Great Lakes freshwater of the world? What percentage?
65.
So we got a 65.
65%?
Who else?
90?
For the world? For the world. It's got to be less than what
Got another
For the world, what percentage of the world's fresh water are the Great Lakes?
Quite a bit. It's larger than people realize.
Yeah.
It's something like 90 something or 80
For
something.
the world, it's 20%. 20%.
20%.
So for North America, it's over 80%. For the world, 20%. 1/5 of the world's fresh water is in our backyard. And so we have a precious resource, and this is not just a resource that we want to be extractive and to get all we can from it. Of course, we should be able to enjoy it, but kind of harkening back to a lot of the indigenous philosophies around nature and our relationship. Really, there ought to be a relationship with our lake. It should be reciprocal, right? We don't just take, but it's a given. It's not even give and take. It's sort of a cyclical relationship that we have to have with our natural world. And for a long time, we've been cut off from it, right? Whether social, whether physical. So I'm passionate about it because we're here, right? We're here. We have Lake Erie, and Lake Erie is a stakeholder in our community. We should think about that, right? And I think further than that, I think a lot of us through the conversations that probably emerged the last time had different kinds of relationships with the lake. Sometimes they're positive. Sometimes communities have been cut off. And I think part of the goal that we're, the philosophy that we're bringing into this effort is to track the histories of our communities, right? It's to track the histories of our communities and our relationship to the lakefront. And that I joined the mayor in his vision about how the lakefront is a place of healing. That our two waterfronts, the lakefront and the riverfront, ought to be places of healing. Because what are they now? What do they symbolize now? Division. Division. Always been a dividing symbol. What if it could be a place where we have one Cleveland, where we're not just ignoring the past, but we're kind of bringing into the future and really reconciling it, right? So that's kind of the big philosophy behind all this. And I firmly believe each of our communities have had a strong touch point on the lakefront. And Lisa can also talk about this too, but a lot of the research you did was looking into the different marks that people had. So thinking about the Native American communities, who were the first nations on our land, and how they, and still, the communities exist today. They are still communing together at the lake. But prior to colonization, they were the first ones to make marks. Lakeshore Drive, the riverfront trails. Euclid Avenue is actually Lakeshore Boulevard. Lakeshore something. Trail, Lakeshore Trail. It actually goes all the way to Buffalo, New York, right? I think a lot of people here know that, but that's because it was a Native American indigenous trading trail that is now called Euclid Avenue. That's the westernized name, right? So there is a name for this trail. And we have to find out what that is in the original indigenous language. But also, you know, a lot of the research was around the Underground Railroad and looking at the maps of the Underground Railroad. And all the trails come to Lake Erie. And this really beautiful idea of like, Lake Erie is a symbol of freedom, and yet we don't have that connection necessarily, right? We also looked at Green Book Cleveland, which I know that has
Eric, where's Eric? Eric's here somewhere.
Eric.
There he is! Eric.
Yeah, so great work, and just like wonderful resource to make it available to everybody, and just looking at that. But also that there are places that have been hostile to communities. The first Chinatown was on Lakeside Avenue. It was removed, and has kept. Yeah. And it has kept moving westward, right, to now over in the more industrial area. So there's a lot of history. There's a lot of history, and I think we ought to recognize that. And if we want to be a healed community, we need to be thinking about that. So that's kind of the philosophy coming into Lakefront. I think we also just deserve great spaces. Right now, it's a big parking lot. It's asphalt. It's not resilient. It's not for people. And we ought to make it for people. So I'll leave it there. Hopefully I answered your question.
Beautiful. That's beautiful. Thank you so much. Can we give it up for our planning director? Joyce is an incredible person, just generally. A longtime friend of Third Space Action Lab, but this is a planning director who really cares. You know, Joyce actually pushes our thinking about the significance of place, and I'm so glad that you decided to, you know, sit down next to me and rap.
Oh, of course. Well, I was like, I work for the government now, so.
Yeah, I know.
The accountability one, I was like, but yeah, no, it's great. Even though I work for the city, it's like, you know, it's this really interesting space of like, what can we do, right? And how do we bring communities into our planning processes and change that? So yeah, hopefully nothing has changed now that I work for the government.
No, there's nobody in. That's it. Ms. Rita?
I think you heard this question before.
Yeah.
Since the natural park situation in regards to from where Lakeshore turns into MLK, and then it runs all the way to 55th. Have you heard anything of what they're going to do? Because I would like it to go back to where it was before Lakeshore was there, 1953, which separated, because we had a beach, just like at Edgewater. We had tennis courts. We had basketball courts. We had the aquarium. We even had part of the zoo.
Are you talking about the Gordon?
That's from where Lakeshore comes down to meet MLK, and then it travels all the way over to 55th Street. And now it's taken over by the park system, so, which we were promised to look like Edgewater way back when. But it's still what we may do of what we could do with it. But I don't know what the park system's going to do because I haven't heard from them. So, is there a way we can shake their cage or something?
Well, I mean, I can pass along the website to you about the plans for Cheers, which is the plans that you're probably referring to, and that is like a 20-year plan because of how much it
After
costs.
20 years.
Yeah.
Well, seriously, after 35 years.
Yep, but it's actually starting to get under permit this year. So there's going to be some actions taken by the Cleveland Metro Parks, and the city is a partner on that project, to expand the fishing pier area. And so we have ARPA dollars that are being put towards expanding the fishing pier for that first phase, because it's such an important part of the east side lakefront. But so I remember your question, Ms. Rita.
we'll bring it back. So I think it's a good segue to talking about the plans for the Northcoast Lakefront Masterplan. I'm also joined by Lalisa Swicken from James Corner Field Operations, and also Cricket. I just want to acknowledge Cricket. Cricket, thank you for being here as well.
There's a chair.
Yeah, this is you're on time. Okay. So Lisa, before we show the video, which is a recap of some of our neighbors' dreams and visions for the lakefront. Like what did they used to go to the lakefront for? Some of their fondest memories at the lakefront, and then also what they want to see there. We're going to ask y'all the same question, and then also your reactions to what you're about to see in just a moment. But Lisa, I just wanted to get your kind of lead into some of the designs that we're going to see. Like, one, what are some of the big ideas that are like motivating the master plan overall? And can you also explain what a master plan is?
Yeah, another two sets of big questions. You're good at that. So maybe starting with just the idea of a master plan, which I think is, it's sort of we don't see most master plans are kind of things that are very static. I think we're trying to view the master plan as less of a static document that's just going to get put on a shelf somewhere. It's a living document. It's kind of a framework for something that has to evolve over time, right? And has to keep shifting and changing. And so the idea, and what we've been spending a lot of time doing, is listening and hearing what the vision is and what the values are. And we're trying to sort of solidify that essence. So what are the key values that this has to have, and ensure that those sort of sustain the test of time, and make sure that those aren't degraded as other things sort of come in. And so there's a number of key values that are part of this, but one of the primary ones was prioritizing public access and public space. And so making sure that the lakefront was not going to be privatized and just a development site, but that actually the majority of Cleveland, all of the neighborhoods, also visitors, tourists, locals, that everyone would sort of have access to it and feel like it was a place for them. So that, I think, is one of the key principles. Of course, there's lots of other ones in terms of, thinking about, okay, there will be some development sites. How do we ensure that those are equitable? There will be, potentially shops and dining. How can those be affordable? And so all of these things are kind of layered into the larger thinking of the master plan. And then there's also just the sort of character and look and feel of the place. And, I think we heard from so many people, and we just wanted it to feel vibrant and kind of eclectic and mixed, and not feel like some large civic monumental gesture, but really have a lot of different things within it. I think, we sort of took a spectrum, we sort of said, from like natural to urban, where do people sort of fall, and it was like right down the middle. And this was something that was really interesting, because people sort of wanted this combination of all of it. They wanted spaces to sort of come together as a community. They wanted spaces that were more passive and contemplative and sort of natural in feel. And it's about a 20-acre site. So you can do all of that. And the idea was how to do that in a simple way. I think for some of the key features, and I'm not going to sort of do a full presentation, but you can watch it, I think, on YouTube, the one that we did yesterday. So we can pass that along. But there's one idea that we call the porches, which I'm probably the most excited about. And this sort of came out of, like, honestly, I think our first conversation here, and we're looking out at these amazing porches, and we know it's this kind of, Cleveland, sort of thing. And we were thinking about, a lot of people think about their waterfronts as a front porch, but like, what does that mean in Cleveland? And like, instead of it, again, being this monumental sort of monotonous gesture, so we have these like eclectic mix, these series of porches that are kind of scattered along the beach edge. And each one is meant to sort of have different materials, styles, expression, individuality. We are really excited, and I think I saw Rhonda here, to, you know, think about them as even invitations for local and national and international artists. We just think it could be this incredible space, and so they're meant to be these like intimate kind of experiences where you can sort of be there and feel like, you know, you're on your own front porch. And, you know, there's lots of other elements, but I think, you know, that's one that I think is particularly fun and unique and kind of breaks down the scale of the site and makes it feel intimate, but they're also aggregated, so it's kind of like you're in your porch and you can see 20 other porches.
Thank you. I'm so excited. Thank you. Oh, let's give that for Lisa. Okay. All right, so Cricky, can you play the video?
Yeah, so this is just a sampling of voices, and we think it really captures a lot of what we heard in your own voices.
So what would you like to see at or on the lakefront in the future?
I would like to see more parks.
In the coming years, more green space.
I would like to see a walking area where we could walk around the lake.
More places to sit and watch a sunset.
Possibly add some benches.
More picnic tables.
Interesting little shops along there.
Maybe some small business vendor events as well. I think that would be great for the community.
Maybe a couple of restaurants.
More live music events.
More things that would attract visitors to the city.
For me, I would like to see a roller skating trail / platform for having roller skaters in the city.
Art installations or kind of interactive pieces for family and children.
Water activities on the lakefront.
I wish we would take more advantage of the water.
I would like to see maybe more of a beach area,
Cleaning of the lake and things like that.
Fairs and festivals where we would talk about the conservation of our water and how to maintain the area and keep it healthy and clean.
More playgrounds or activities for the kids.
More space for family, for kids especially.
More opportunities for young people.
I would love to see the city, the waterfront somehow unifying the east and the west.
I'd like to see some people from the west side and the east side come together on the lakefront as well.
I would like to see all individuals have the experience of enjoying the lakefront.
We're going to bring the whole Cleveland as one down to the lakefront, enjoy, and have festivities together as Cleveland as one.
Well, can we hear a couple other ideas? Okay, y'all mind if I open it up? All right. So, what else would we like to see on the lakefront? Anybody could pop it out?
Yes. Again, I always in the Chicago lakefront and moved for the food international, especially for Cleveland. I have so many athletes. If maybe to the once a month, good weather for the food, that would be wonderful.
Anyone else?
You see how everybody enjoy it because they got the little bikes you could ride around and you could go to the water and go over here, that way and here. Plus you could go into the water and move your own boat or some kind of ride they had there. So yeah, they had different. You know, I mean Chicago. Did they go? Remember? Who do we have? Mayor? We had a mayor here, I forgot. He had went to Chicago and he saw the lakefront in Chicago and he tried to bring it to Cleveland and they wouldn't accept it. I cannot think of that kid's name.
What is it? What is it? Was it black or white?
Was it Stokes?
What year?
Was it Carl Stokes? Back in the 60s, late 60s? Carl Stokes, 69.
And Perk?
So our conversations in Cleveland have been almost exclusively talking about the lakefront and then another conversation about the riverfront. So what is the reconciliation? Because we have two very critical bodies of water, and we never talk about them in council.
Yeah, right. And it's a great point. Actually, just this week, the mayor was like, yeah, we're a 2 waterfront city. And we should take advantage of that. Not every city has 2 waterfronts. Not everybody has a river and a lake and 20% of the world's fresh water. So I think it's a great point. The site is a little bit constrained because it's a working waterfront still. And so I think we ought to really think about how do we make that connection from, and so corny, but it's the, what is it, shore to core to shore. And like really make a good connection, especially through and around. And there are actually trails? There's like a water trail that actually you can connect, and it's actually named as a water trail where you can actually connect through the water, as well as thinking about how our streets can connect all the way from the lake to the riverfront. But maybe there ought to be some bigger thinking about it.
Yeah, I mean, I know that there's in the larger question and the beginning of this conversation where Evelyn was talking also about like where the money is. I do think there's a concerted effort to try to think about the riverfront and the lakefront together to go after federal funding and think of it more holistically that way. I will say, and Joyce was sort of referencing some of the indigenous sort of movements on the site, and the confluence of the lake and the river was like sacred ground, actually. That idea of those 2 bodies of water meeting is like a very special place, right? And it's usually seen as almost like a birth, right? It's like a kind of a home kind of place. And so I do think even, there's the kind of whatever design side or technical side, but there's also a kind of spiritual side of it too, and like where these sort of waters come together and sort of respecting that and seeing that as an asset too.
Beautiful. Mr. Lee, what do we want to see on the lakefront?
I'd like to see a pier that goes out further into it, making also a spot where younger entrepreneurs could get space, and sell their products or whatever they have to offer.
Great ideas.
And also some restaurants where you don't have to drive 30 miles just to go get something.
Beautiful, thank you.
As someone who stays in downtown when I'm here, it is like you have to go to the neighborhoods to eat. So.
Okay. Well, oh, sure.
Maybe we should show them that.
This doesn't have much for the lakefront or anything. This has something to do with, I would say, the development or close proximity neighborhoods that's actually around that area. He made a good point. Having a co-working space for those like-minded, innovative, coming up kids as well too. Just so we can grasp on the future, what it looks like. Just because I love to harbor the past of different things for sure. Just like over in different cultures, different buildings become historical pieces that they still practice their ways of life in them, something similar to this. And how can we kind of like more so continue to capture? I've seen that artwork right there on the wall. It's a building like close by 55th, that's on Down Street from St. Clair. And I was confused, I'm like, is this one of his workings or not? I'm not sure. But more so taking those places and turning them into historical places, but also places we can still create out of.
That's a great point. So I'm hearing like creation, like create creation and culture and creating culture, and then also just things like free internet, so that you can hang around for a while and it doesn't feel like you need to just move along or something like that. So, all right, I'm going to turn it back over to Lisa. Do you want to, actually, would it be helpful just to show the before photo, like where the area is? Just, I'm sorry, I know you just. You just scroll all the way up to. There's a lot of pictures. So if you
Yeah,
wanna
I think
see,
you can
go
just
to-
flip through maybe. So this is the kind of focus of the area, and there's an idea of a land bridge connection from the malls, which is the lower part of the image in the red, going up down to the lakefront, the existing parking lots just north of the stadium. And then actually, if you go to the next set of slides, you know, we did this for us, but we thought it was helpful for everyone, and we picked sites hopefully that are familiar to you in Cleveland, but you can kind of get a sense of the scale. So this is if you were to superimpose Edgewater Beach right over the site. You get a sense of the scale of that. Euclid Beach, Public Square, there would actually fit 3 of them. And then the Solstice Steps. And, you know, I think if you maybe skip to the flow lines, I think we sort of talked about these movements or flows on the site, and part of the idea, or the kind of inspiration of these were all of these lines marking the site, and that became a design vocabulary for us. So the series of sketches that follow this slide was a way to sort of begin to organize the site and think about it with these different flows, some of which were a record of flows in the past and some of which are kind of new flows in the future. And so this idea of varying the edge and creating different experiences for how people can embrace the water, because some are comfortable next to water, some are not comfortable next to water, etc. This idea, this kind of interlocking loop of moving from the city back to the lake and connecting it. And then this idea of creating a lakefront for everyone, taking all of what we heard and kind of having places that are more urban in nature, that are more about sort of natural experiences, that have to do with play and that are really family friendly, and then also areas for more economic development, growth, and opportunities. And that's what kind of led to the next image that was up on the screen, which is the initial sort of sketch of ideas. And you can hopefully see there, that's the land bridge. It's sort of on an arc, a sort of gentle arc that's connecting back to the mall. And there's this kind of landing moment. Similar idea and strategy to the Solstice Steps, but one where you can actually, at a very sloped, gentle grade that's accessible, work your way down into a kind of community plaza and water play area. You can see the sort of beach and the ledges with all the porches. There's a kind of sloped lawn, and then a new kind of nature play with sports courts and a cookout grove, etc., with a varied shoreline. And maybe just go to the little at view, like just so you can kind of, you can skip over some of the sections. But
Lisa, while you're doing that, can you explain what a land bridge means?
yeah. A land bridge is just a kind of fancy term for a bridge that can also support other things, such as planting, and isn't just a sort of engineered typical point A to point B.
And is it pedestrian only?
It is, in this case, I mean, there are some that are actually even just for wildlife, but in this case it is pedestrian and bike. Sure, thank you. So this is showing that connection. I think just to get some insights and sort of like what you would experience from your eye on the ground, maybe just go to some of those views. So this is the land bridge looking back to the city. Those are those series of steps that were facing west towards the sunset. You can skip past this for now. That's a blow-up area of the sort of play area, the nature play area, and the different basketball courts and other flex courts. And one of the things that we think is really fun and intentional was that from the top of the bridge, the land bridge, you can actually look down. So you kind of get this amazing view, and you can sort of be on display too. It's not meant to be something hidden in the back. It's meant to be something that is like part of the life of the place. This is showing an image of the kind of nature play area. It's also that relationship to the Rock Hall and to the Great Lakes Science Center, where they do get a lot of kids and buses and people coming in and using that. We just wanted to sort of recognize that there was a kind of population already there, young kids, youth, and so giving them a space to kind of expand and go outdoors. This is from the top of the plaza looking, or the top of the steps, looking at that central sort of plaza area. We are showing roller skating there.
That's the roller skating.
Yeah. And with an eye towards also, you know, having winter uses and that being able to be transformed in the winter to something else. That's a zoom in of the sort of beach, and you can see all the little porches, and the idea that there's a kind of elongated transition. So there's a series of steps. So if you want to hang out on the steps and look at little critters and do that kind of thing and explore, if you want to be on the sandy beach, or if you want to be up in the sort of porch plazas looking out, all of those experiences are possible. And there's a kayak ramp that goes through.
I want to make sure we all, what is the beach point, or sorry.
Oh, yeah.
What is the porch?
The porches are all of these sort of little places, and I think there's a couple at Great Views too that maybe show that idea a little bit better. And again, for now they're just sketches. The idea is that like artists, community members, others can actually design those. We don't have ownership over those. It's actually meant to be specifically eclectic and kind of representative. This was a series of sketches of the idea that it's not a singular porch. The whole idea is about a variety of porches that come together to create something that feels unique to Cleveland. And so this was an image of being in a porch, looking out, seeing the other porches and the edge, and also an idea that in the winter they sort of become these little warming huts. What was that? I missed that. Oh, yeah. So I actually grew up in Columbus, Ohio, not on any sort of lakefront, but I remember going to my first beach at night and seeing all the little campfires like dotting the beach and it being like this really magical experience. And then this is the large sloped lawn that we actually think could easily convert to a sledding hill, which could be really fun in the winter. And a fishing pier, so someone who said a little pier, the idea was that that kind of would extend out and become a fishing pier at the end. And this is a more sort of urban promenade where you could have food carts and other types of smaller vendors, etc., welcomed here to that space. Yeah, so that's a snippet. Oh, you have one.
Okay,
Oh, sorry, one more thing with the porches, that idea of like the histories and the stories, the idea was also that these were places to integrate those stories. And so they're meant to be these kind of storytelling circles in many ways for, you know, people to come together and tell stories, but we were also asking people like, name a porch, or like who would you want to honor there? Who would you, and so I think they can have that layer as well.
Beautiful, thank you. Okay.
Oh, hello. No, the question is, did they do a rendering of the drawings where it includes the port? Because I want to see how close it is to everything. And in regards to the ships coming in, that are unloading, loading, and all of that. And one other question before you start. Yep. Does anybody know anything about removing a bridge on Cuyahoga River?
Oh, I know about that. I can address that. Do you want me to do that first, or you want to do this first?
Well, the port is just to the west. That slip that you see there is actually where the current cruises come in. And so the idea is that actually from that lawn you get this view. We didn't want to like hide the working waterfront. Like that's a cool part of, you know, this site. And so you could actually sit and look at the port and have that experience as well.
Yeah, so the port is a next door neighbor, and I think we want to make sure that intersects, and they are going to continue working and expanding. It's a big part of our economy. Your question about the bridge on the riverfront. Yeah, I know.
Is that the Columbus River?
It's the Eagle Bridge is probably what you're talking about. So it is not working right now. No, the one, are you talking about taking a bridge down? Is that the one?
Yeah, like removing it, because that is an asset for the city.
I know. So right now the bridge is in an up position. So if you're coming across I-90, you'll see a bunch of bridges. And it's kind of hard to describe. It's kind of near in between the Scranton Road Peninsula and the South Flats. It's very hard to describe. But there's a iconic bridge that's in the up position, meaning it doesn't go up and down anymore. But the the metal barriers, the metal poles that are holding it up are failing. So it's gonna fall down. And so the city got a grant a while ago to take down the bridge because it's really, really, really expensive to keep it up. Do you have an opinion about it?
Of course I do.
I'll come back to you, Ms. Rita.
Yeah.
Anybody else? We got, what do you like? What questions do you have? What parts do you want us to go back and explain? Any thoughts?
Well, can I say something really quick about the bridge? I think we are trying to find creative ways to see what we can do with it. Because ultimately it's going to cost millions and millions and millions of dollars to stabilize it. And I don't think we want to necessarily put, it depends. Is it a priority? How big of a priority is it to keep
Well,
going?
the reason why I say I know there's two up and down bridges.
Yeah.
There's one that goes right into Lake Erie,
Right.
which the railroad goes on.
Oh, that one's working. Yeah, that one's
I know
working.
that. But is this isn't the one that a lot of people use.
It's
Okay.
it's stuck in the up position, yeah.
Well, I
Yeah.
mean, it hasn't been used.
That hasn't been used.
Okay. That's the reason why I was asking, because if there's a way bridges that actually work, a lot of tourists come and just stand
And watch the
our bridges.
working bridges.
So that's
yeah.
a major asset to the city. So that's why
It is. I see. So you like the working bridges? Okay, you like, good. Yeah, those are going to keep working. But there is one that does not work anymore that the city is planning to take down. Sorry, I think Harry was going to say something.
Yes, thank you. As someone who was born and raised in Cleveland, this is exciting to see this change happen. I have quite fond memories of my grandparents taking me downtown for picnics on Mall C, but it was always like, that's where it stopped at.
Yeah.
So to see this is kind of like, it's great. I was curious to know also, was it going to include possibly any like aerial attraction, like maybe like a monorail of some sort, or like a, what you call it, not a ski lift, but like a scenic route that way. And like a skyline of some sort. That'd be like an idea also.
Zip line? Not currently, but hey, if you want to bring that up. No, I think, what is really remarkable is that, as all of you know, if you're trying to get from anywhere in downtown along that bluff to the lakefront now, I mean, it's 15, 20 minute walk. When the land bridge comes in, that's like a 7-minute walk now, because you're bridging over that cut. And so the idea is that, that in and of itself just provides a level of ease that will hopefully bring many more people down. It's also not meant to be super singular. It is on this curve, but there's the idea of having a multimodal transit hub that RTA and Amtrak would combine to, so that gives a transit option, and there's the idea that it will connect to the future stadium renovation as well as to the Great Lakes Science Center and the Rock Hall. So it's not only one directional, but it's also reaching back in the other directions as well.
Thank you. That was my next question too about the Amtrak, to see if it was going to be more accessible also.
Yeah.
It's still cut off now.
I know.
Thank you.
Is that bridge going over Route 2?
Is it going over Route 2?
Yeah, so this is showing Route 2 if it were not there anymore, and instead it's just a road, right? So those are the two options right now that we're not necessarily showing in this, but when we come back in a month or two, the city's going to have to decide by the end of the year to keep the Route 2, which just kind of goes up and around, or to turn it more into a flat roadway. Yeah. Yeah.
But in either condition, the land bridge would cross over.
Yeah.
So the idea is it could work in either scenario. If the elevated part of it gets pushed down so it's, an at-grade condition, or if it stays elevated.
My question is I love the land bridge because it connects to downtown. My question is about connectivity along the lake. One of the big improvements we've seen with the west side is the bike trail and walking trail that goes all the way from downtown to Edgewater. Is there anything along similar to this, and particularly to cross the river so you don't have to go back into downtown, and how do you get to the east side neighborhoods? Because this is great and it's going to attract a lot of people, but do they have to drive or find, circuitous public transportation to get there?
So if you were to bike, I'm going to try to point it out. Right now, what the idea is that, see the gray lines coming across near the top? That's the road, right? The gray coming across.
The bottom road.
I'm sorry, the one there, yeah, where the
The new
mouse is
boat.
going. So there would be a bike trail that is off the street that would kind of be alongside that road. And then it would connect into what will be the East 9th to East 55th Street bike trail. And Mandel Foundation just gave a really big grant to make sure that that can happen. And then from 55th, there is that trail alongside 55th and 72nd, and then up through MLK, right, through the cultural gardens. So there's, hopefully in the next few years, we're going to see that east side connection really become strengthened. But I think your question too about how do you get across from here to the west side, there are some connections that you could take West 3rd, and that's something we want to explore, is you could take West 3rd, coming down West 3rd, right down through the riverfront, and then across the river down into where the Tremont area is, and that's something that we are interested in looking at. Yeah. And that goes right to the towpath.
I'm actually going to pass. I want to nitpick right there.
Yeah.
Is there another north-south intersection, or are you funneling everyone onto the land bridge?
So East 9th is going to stay, and we're going to improve East 9th, make it more walkable, and then West 3rd is going to have an improvement as well. Yeah, West 3rd will stay.
So West 3rd kind of continues around, connects to Erie side now. So those two will sort of be linked a little more strongly. So you could kind of come down West 3rd, wrap around, and then you're at the lakefront, but then you can come back and get back onto the shoreway and get onto East 9th as well. Sort of just off the screen. But yeah.
And by the way, you can nitpick. I mean, we're trying to, it's, we're trying to, we're at, what we're calling a 30-40% design right now, and we're coming here because there's a sort of real intention to continue to develop and evolve this design. And so, we do want to get, both gut checks on the sort of character and feel and the things that are happening there, but we're also open to ideas and want to hear concerns as well.
I still play Sim City to this day, so.
There was a power plant. There was a power plant that was taken down close to 72nd Street. I was wondering what did they have in mind in doing for that area? Some farther east, farther.
Yeah, that used to be the First Energy plant.
Right.
Yeah. So First Energy, I believe, sold it to somebody who we are in touch with, and we are very closely following that. And if you have ideas about what you'd like to see there, I would love to hear it, because that way we can kind of help shape and influence what that looks like.
Yeah, I'd like to see a cultural center there, since you go right on the edge of the cultural garden.
Okay, that's a great point.
Beautiful. Sometimes they don't have a lot of park.
It also connects right to Gordon Park too. And so I totally anticipate that Gordon Park is going to get redesigned over the next year or two. So we would love to hear that as well.
I had another quick question about I don't know if y'all like me, but these renderings are beautiful, and it makes me forget about what's there. Do you have a picture, or can you describe what is this going over, or what?
It's kind of easy to describe because it's a big empty parking lot. Yeah, that is the condition today. Although actually those two little buildings have been demolished, those aren't there anymore. So it's literally a large empty parking lot with what's called a sheet pile, which is basically just a kind of edge. It was all fill, right? So I think in some of it, for those of you that might have been in the previous conversations, we had sort of talked about that the historical bluff line was actually back at the end of the malls, and everything north of that was fill over time, right? So this was all fill, and that area is literally just a large empty parking lot right now.
And fill means, sorry, this is how I do all of our engagements. Like,
You know that I appreciate that. So fill is basically when you take material and you're kind of, that wasn't there, and usually it's from construction sites and other things around the city. Here we've heard that it's actually fairly clean fill. In other places it can be landfill and other things. But this is basically like old sand, rock, etc. from other sites in the city that were then basically dumped and filled at the lake in those conditions to create developable land.
Can I also add something about that too? This is more of a fun fact that I learned this last year. The Cuyahoga River keeps filling in with dirt. And if it keeps filling in with dirt, it'll eventually close off the river, and then you can't use the river anymore for anything. So the port and the Army Corps, which is the group that comes in, they actually dredge the riverfront. You probably heard about this, right? They dredge the riverfront, and they take all that extra dirt that's like starting to pile into the river. They take it all out, and they clean it north of Burke Airport. So there's a little like sifting station where they clean out all the dirt. Oh, how much do you think they clean a year in tons? How much dirt do you think they clean a year in tons?
A lot.
Tonnage. 200,000 tons of fill per year. So they clean it, and then it's got to go somewhere, right? And so that's kind of part of a lot of this is kind of like, that's why our lakefront keeps growing up in a lot of ways. Yeah.
Well, and actually, for those of you that are familiar with the Cheers project, that is actually the idea, the impetus behind that was actually that they needed to find new locations to put the dredge. And so they're kind of building these habitat islands and other things with that, the material that's coming out of dredging the river. So I don't know the particulars of this dredge, but a lot of times dredge is like not so great for structural stuff, so they have to mix it with other things. But we heard that this dredge has a lot of sand in it. And so even things like the beach or whatever, we might be able to sift out and use from the dredge material.
Yeah, so can I elaborate on that? So what it means is that you can't build a lot of buildings on it because it's not going to be stable enough. And and we also don't want to blast this site with development sites. Like, it's just should be publicly accessible, right? And I think that's one thing I really appreciate about your perspective is it's called inside-out planning, because most people start with the developments and then plan all the green space around it. But here you're starting with...
Which becomes no green space.
Which becomes no green space. But this is where you're starting with, you're inside out. So it's starting with green public realm and then placing the developments where it makes sense. So that's why you see the buildings are kind of like tucked to the back, near the road. It's pretty conservative. It's like 300 units of housing, maybe a hotel, maybe a venue. But it's not like past plans, like people have blasted this with like building pad, which is just where the buildings are located, like tons of development. And really this, you can see the focus of this is public access.
I have to admit, before Sean goes, this whole time I was looking at this, I didn't realize that the big thing in the middle is Brown State.
It is. It's just a big white box right now. It's a big white box, it's Brown State.
That is kind of a segue, the last 2 points from my question. It's not really a question. It's more so like confirm that the village is, like you said, probably residential. Wow. Because whoever's paying for that, good luck.
Yes, sir.
But it's giving off like the owner of like SoFi vibes, right? Like that whole kind of money situation, you know. So I just want to like we can nip that in the bud, right? Like that's not part of anything, right?
I don't know if I know what you're referring to. Maybe you do.
So the owner of the Rams, I forgot his name.
Oh.
But he owns basically, what is it?
Stan Kroenke.
Yes. Say again?
Stan Kroenke.
Stan Kroenke. He owns the Rams and moved them to LA, but he bought the land around the new stadium. And that land, basically the people who live on the land paid for it. because he advertised it as, and correct me if I'm wrong, but he advertised it as residential, but then that funded the stadium.
This is city land, so it is
City
not owned by the
It's
Browns.
not all about that. Okay, just wanted to nip down, but I saw the village and I was like, that's housing.
Yeah.
100%.
No, and I think the idea is too, and you can hopefully see it even in its sketch form, is that the ground floor is also meant to be activated. And ideally, those would be more community-focused uses and things that are, again, kind of speaking to the more affordable dining and other types of options. There also is like public restroom, all those things could be part of like, you know, ground floor space as well.
Wouldn't want to live there.
It's also just really cold.
Yeah, that's it.
Lisa, do you have any questions for the family? Like any questions that you're still sitting with?
Well, I mean, I think that we are looking, truly looking for ways to make this better. And so I think suggestions you have that would make it, where you would feel like, if you added this or thought about this, I would want to go there. Be great to hear. I think we're looking for things that also make it feel unique to Cleveland, and that doesn't mean like it's only in Cleveland and you'd never see that type of thing anywhere else in the world, but that it just feels like it's right here, like this belongs here. So all of those ideas we're open to, as well as, if there's bigger questions or bigger moves or bigger things that you guys think, we're open. So we'd love to hear from you.
Please, everyone, take a look at your sheets in front of you. That's what the purpose of that is for.
Is RCA going to reactivate the water plant?
It's actually this fall. They're going to start it again.
I just want to know, was this happening before the rebuild of the stadium or after?
Oh, like when it's going to be built?
Before or after the stadium?
Yeah.
Redoing the Brown Stadium, is this before or after?
Yeah. That's a good question. Well, we're going to try to wrap up the design and get more detailed next year, and then see if we can start competing for some of those federal grants. And we don't know exactly what the timeline looks like, to be honest. But it's probably going to be on different timelines.
I was just going to say that while it does have the ability to kind of integrate, and they will have to be seen together, it is being designed in a way that one could be built before the other, or vice versa.
And can you say more about just kind of like what's next in general? I heard you say you're about 30-40%.
Yeah, so we're planning to be back in the fall, so in a couple months, with integrating in this latest round of feedback and kind of coming back with the next iteration. And then the goal is at that point we'll solicit additional feedback, and we'll still have a couple months to integrate that. And the goal is that the master plan report will be finalized before the end of the year. As I said, like the master plan, it's not going to go into all the design details. So after that, there's a true design phase where we'd probably select what would be the first phase of this development in detail and design that, which will also have room for feedback. But the goal is to finish the master plan document before the end of the year.
And then what does that mean from a public perspective?
Like adopting
it.
Yep. So first things first, what it means to finish the master plan and have it adopted by the city is that it would go to the City Planning Commission at the end of the year, where the commissioners would look at it and then vote on making it officially on the record for the city. And then, the next step would then be what Lisa was talking about, design phase. And in that design phase, you usually try to get a cost estimate, a general cost estimate. Then you start to really kind of look at, okay, well, let's look at the sun deck. And if we're going to really start to design that, what are the materials? How is it going to site? Do we have to coordinate it with other things like utilities? For the bridge, what's going to go on the bridge? Do we want to have more landscaping? Do we want activities to happen on the bridge? What kind of programs are going to be? So there's a lot more detail to come after even the master plan is adopted. This is just sort of like a concept. and then you kind of go deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper until you get
Drawings for
construction documents, which are very like inches and feet and all of that. So usually that takes a few years. So I think the idea is that we want to keep the conversation going because there's still time to give input. But I would say for the master plan adoption, the overall framework that is being adopted is like, all right, we generally know there's going to be 4 building pads, 4 to 6,
A land bridge.
a land bridge, and a public space. So somebody can't come later and be like, okay, well, we're looking for somewhere to build something, and we're gonna
A new studio.
we're gonna set up a sun deck. Like, I think we would have to look to what's being adopted to say, well, I don't think that's maybe a change. So there's a change in the future, but according to this plan, would you say that's accurate, Lisa? It's generally like guiding you.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's, it has to be both flexible enough, but at the same time, you do want to get in a certain level of like characters and amenities and those types of things, right? Because it's not just going to be a green box that's like 80% open space, 20% development. This is about 20%, I think, when we ran the numbers. But that will be part of it, but it's also like, and within the open space, these are the types of things that, so it is giving also a little bit of that character and look and feel, but it's not going down to saying like, this is going to be concrete paving that is 3 feet by 2 feet and blah, blah, blah,
I appreciate y'all answering the question just to tie it back to our earlier conversation about the Partnership for Equitable and Resilient Communities. That's what I heard in your question, Sean, right? It's like, if we, the people, help contribute to a plan, how much can get changed? When can we anticipate seeing things? When do you need us again? Like, this is public education stuff, right? Like, tell us what you're doing, come back, tell us again, tell us when it changed, and to protect what it is we've invested in, our time and our thoughts in. Because I think, correct me if I'm wrong, it's like, who can buy it? It's important to know that the city owns it, there's not a private owner on public lands, all those sorts of things are the things that we want to make sure that y'all come back and continue to explain, like, through the process, because we ain't no engineers.
Well, explain and in some ways memorialize.
Yes.
So in the report, there will be a series of recommendations, priorities. Those things are memorialized in the sense that, sure, they'll be adopted, and who knows if someone, the hope is this is not yet another master plan, and it actually is something that gets implemented, right? But I do think that that's another great prompt. If there's certain things that you feel strongly need to be memorialized and documented in that plan, it's good for us to know.
And remind us, what plan is this again, Joyce?
17.
17. Y'all hear that? 17 master plan.
Yeah, can I use the mic for a second?
There's still more Brown starting quarterbacks though.
Way more.
Yeah, getting more.
That made me feel better when you said that.
But my last statement, and I promise I'll be quiet. There are a lot of private development plans that have been adopted in those 16 prior plans. And we really felt like, and we had a direct conversation with this for the prior planner, Haslam's Source Group, that we felt that this ought to be a city-led process that would have a public process to it. And so that's why all the things you're saying, we need to hear it because we will memorialize it in this plan. And so we will be back, hopefully by invitation, later this fall, and then Planning Commission in December, aiming for that. So there's just a lot of, I think 1 or 2 more times that we'll have like times to talk about it. So.
Well, and also we have a direct line with Mordecai
Ellen,
and others. So if you feel more comfortable talking to them, then they'll relay that stuff to us as well too. That is great. I want to buy that Robert Madison book, by the way, so save a copy.
10% off.
That's going to be my plane ride.